I want you to picture this. It's early August, somewhere around 7 a.m. You just now sit down and find your seat, maybe in the cafeteria, maybe in some type of lecture hall, and you see your principal come up. And she just starts to say the same old cliches that you've heard time in and time out. Well, that's what we're talking about today. We went to Twitter and we asked you what some of the biggest educational cliches that you hear in professional development in your faculty meetings, and we're going to go over them today here on the Teach Bigger podcast.
Welcome to the Teach Bigger podcast. I'm Chris Pratt.
I'm Chris Mosley.
And I'm Tyler Lamont.
Hey, Tyler, I want to say that's probably your best intro ever. I just want to affirm you that you are doing a really good job, because I remember in season 2, you tried every episode to get a good intro and we had to cut them all. And so you've
Pratt,
come a long way.
Pratt. Hey, I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to piggyback on what you're saying, Pratt. Lamont, I think that was just one of the greatest that you've ever done, because I remember in season 2, we had to cut some of those, and you are just doing really a good job. Do you see what happened there? Everyone, do you see what just happened there? We're in a teacher's meeting right now.
Right.
And this is what we're talking about today.
Here's the one part that you missed, though. It would be this. You know, Tyler, you're just a rock star. You're like a superstar at this.
Oh.
Yeah. So you just got 3 cliches in a row. Did you catch them? If you're teaching you, I know you caught them. Let's start with one of them. Okay. This is probably one of my biggest pet peeves is, let me just piggyback. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think this is one of the biggest reasons meetings go on for longer than they should, because of the quote unquote piggyback. I believe that sometimes is an opportunity for me to have my voice heard, because I don't really have much to say. Or I want to contribute to the meeting. I just don't know how. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like if you don't have something new to say, then don't say it. Don't piggyback and say this. So I believe that piggybacking is saying this if you replace it. Let me just say the same thing you said. I just want to hear myself say it. So people know that I contributed to the meeting. So piggybacking, definitely a big cliche in the teacher world.
You know, you could be like me, Mosley, and for the first 2 years of my teaching career, I just wrote "just don't" on my hand whenever I was in a faculty meeting. So whenever I felt like I wanted to contribute, I just looked at my hand and reminded myself, "Oh, just don't." And I just kept sitting there. I was like, "It'll be okay. There's no reason for me to put my 2 cents in."
I even tell my kids that. I'm like, "Listen, if I said I don't mind you saying things that give like my leadership, because they can talk and they can give feedback and stuff. I said, just don't say the same thing that I said. I said, do you want me to like get on you in front of everyone else? Then don't piggyback. Mm-hmm. Okay. Say something new. So it's not like we're just repeating and going in circles. So they know the same thing about the piggyback.
Now look, as somebody who's led a lot of professional development, right? I appreciate, as a presenter or administrator or whatever, I appreciate people who want to contribute, because that is rare. Like most teachers, they don't want to contribute, right? I mean, if you think about it,
we're tired.
Right, because they expect their students to contribute, but they don't really want to contribute themselves, right?
Right.
Okay. So that being said, I appreciate the contribution. However, if you're going to reiterate something that someone has said in your own words to give yourself the opportunity to speak, just the big thing for me is just don't announce it. Don't say, "Hey, I'm piggybacking." That's like saying, "Hey, I don't have an original thought." So just catch yourself.
And if you notice, they always say that. They always say, "Hey, I just want to piggyback with what Joe Blow said." You know,
I was literally in a meeting. I think it was my first year. And it was, we were doing something in professional development, because it was like right before the school year started. And I remember counting it. I think we went to like 5 or 6 of like, I would just like to piggyback off of it. Yeah. And to piggyback off of so-and-so. And just to, join the bandwagon of the piggyback, the piggyback bandwagon here. And I'm like, they're all saying the same thing. Like,
but I feel better now because I added to the meeting.
I'm like, we could have already broke to lunch. Like, what's going on?
That's all it is.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So now I think
Hate it.
a follow up to that though is this. Okay, so there is this big move in education right now about like social emotional learning and building up culture in your district. And I am a huge advocate of it. I think it is the most important thing. Affirmations are huge right now. And it's important that we as an educational community and as a school district or a campus culture or whatever, that we affirm each other, that we encourage each other, we build each other up. And I think affirmations are huge. However, there are a lot of people that take advantage of the affirmation by making it a piggyback. And so instead of saying, hey, I want to piggyback off of this, somebody will hear you make a comment, and then that said person will then say, hey, I just want to affirm you for saying that. And then they'll reiterate what you just said. So be careful that you're not using an affirmation incorrectly. So I think that's another one of these educational cliches that we're going to get in trouble with if we're not careful. And that is using an affirmation incorrectly. An affirmation needs to be used to recognize something that someone's doing and building them up, not for you to have a platform to piggyback off of somebody else.
Yeah.
So. I would just like to affirm, Pratt, it's not right for someone to take somebody else's thought and try to make it their own individual thought when in reality, like, they don't really have things to say. And we could really, really be diluting the word affirmation for sure.
For sure. Hey, speaking of that, okay, and so this kind of takes us to our next one, right? Another word that is commonly misused and that is causing all kinds of an uproar in education is your favorite word. Ready, everybody? Here it is.
Oh.
Here it comes. Rigor.
Oh.
Rigor.
I've never heard this before.
Oh.
Listen, hold on, pause. We were in a district, we had a rigor camp. It was like a week. Like they brought us back from like summer break, and we had 2 weeks of professional development, and 1 week was dedicated all to rigor.
Right.
We heard the word rigor like 40,000 times that week.
Okay, so most of the time when people, at least here would be the assumption that most of the time when people are using the word rigor in education, what they're talking about is, instruction, schoolwork, learning experiences, whatever it might be, that are challenging, right? Whether it's personally, that challenges the class, the culture, whatever the case may be, but that it's intellectually stimulating and it moves kids forward and out of their comfort zones, right? But a lot of times, there are a lot of educators who really hate this word because, like, it comes from rigor mortis, right? Where it's like stiff and rigid. And so then there's people that look at rigor wrong, and then they start saying, like, we need to be more rigorous. Like, we have to make sure that everything's done exactly this way. And so there's a big controversy. So I think rigor is becoming one of those buzzwords that it hit this high, this climax, and now people are distorting it, and it's falling back down. And so to the common teacher, to the average teacher, when they hear the word rigor, they cringe because they're like, that means I have to do more lesson planning. That means I have to follow more templates. I have to do whatever, A, B, and C. So I definitely think rigor is another one of those words that is commonly.
Tyler, you've definitely heard that word.
I mean, maybe once or twice. Now I've heard, what is it? Oh man, I totally forgot the word. Not a rubric. I've heard rubric.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's a good
lot.
one. Well, that's a good one.
Oh my gosh,
You
dude!
gotta have
I've heard
rubric.
rubric so many times, and like, there's so many definitions on like, this is what a rubric is, and no, your rubric should be like this, and like, you should just grade it. Like my favorite is when they'll take a rubric and they'll be like, grade the number. What is the number? What does that even mean? And then they'll just replace the number with like a letter, and then I'm like, you didn't do anything new or revolutionary. Like, it's still just a rubric. You just, instead of giving them a 90, you gave them an A.
Right.
Alec, going back to, let me just piggyback off of rigor. No,
Go
okay.
ahead,
So
go ahead.
I think rigor is a word in education that we hear like so much. We just feel like we know exactly what it means, but we really can't like define it. I think teachers really just think that it's like make work harder.
Yeah.
Like, I'll give more work.
Yeah.
And we don't question it because we know it's one of those like words that might be used on our teacher evaluation. So we just acknowledge it and say, yeah, we're rigorous. We're rigorous in our classroom.
Right.
We do a lot of rigorous things and whatever. So
right. I give homework every night. This is a rigorous class.
I'm tired. It's rigorous.
Yeah.
But, so one of the ones that I hear all the time, and it's almost to the point where like I'll make a tally of it because like people say it all the time in the middle of their speeches, especially like APs or like principals or something, and it's kiddos.
Ooh.
And like it's like at first it didn't really bother me. I was just like, okay, well, like whatever. Like they're educational. Like I get it. Like they're a teacher. They're an admin. They're saying kiddos, you know? And then it just kind of got to the point where I was like, it's like I almost flinch every time they say it because it's just like it's like they say it the same exact way with the same exact inflection no matter the sentence. And I can't even demonstrate how.
Oh no, I wanted you to demonstrate.
Okay, it's like our kiddos going over here, and you know, you gotta ask about how our kiddos are.
It's a pause.
Yeah. You know, it's all about what's best for our kiddos.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah,
like every single time.
Yeah. That's funny now because I don't think I really paid attention to that, but I think now I'm gonna listen for it. And the first time someone says it like that, I'm gonna probably laugh in their face.
Right.
That's really what it is. It's like I don't know. Everyone says it like that. You know, it's just all for our kiddos. Right. And I'm like, why do you have to say it like that?
Yeah, it's like
so,
Cheetos.
So the same one of our friends that shared that word also shared this scenario on Twitter with us, and it was whenever you're asked to cover a class, right, or whoever's asked to cover a class, and then suddenly that becomes babysitting. And I got to thinking about that. I was like, man, that is so true.
Funny story. So here's what happened yesterday. One of a coworker of mine, we teach at the high school and the junior high. And so we were at the junior high, which we're not like assigned to the junior high. Like we go there to help our teachers there and help them whatever they need. And so my colleague was walking in the hallway and by like, mind you that he's not he doesn't have a room there. He's not there but like 1 or 2 periods a day. And he was walking in the hallway and a teacher said, "Hey, stop. Can you watch my class while I go use the restroom?" And I'm like, they don't know you. They don't know that, you know, because he's not there all the time. And he said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "So you just watched a stranger's classroom?" I was like, "Who was the teacher?" He's like, "I don't know. Did she know you?" "No." Look, and she wants to watch the class.
Look, when you gotta go, you gotta go.
So like, if that connects with that's babysitting, I don't know. That was I thought it was hilarious.
Well, I think
that's child avoidance right there.
Yeah. No, I think I think it's a little bit more boils down to it's that mentality like these aren't my kids, and I'm just gonna babysit them because I'm sure I ain't gonna teach them, right? You know what I'm saying? And it's just kind of that feeling that like because this isn't my responsibility, these kids aren't going to get what they need. And I think we've got to be careful of that because, you know, if an admin or whoever, or you volunteer to cover somebody's class, like
voluntold,
let the education continue, you know, because you're an educator, you are a teacher, and they may not be quote unquote your kids, but they are kids and they need to be taught and they need to have a free day.
They're kiddos.
Yeah, they're the kiddos, right? So, yeah, for sure. So,
you know, okay, so here's something that I started hearing mainly this year, okay? And maybe you guys have heard it. It's probably because of COVID and the whole world stopping. It was the rollout plan. Like the rollout, the rollout. Okay, so we're gonna roll out this plan here, and that plan's gonna tell you this and this and that. And then after that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna roll out this next part, and then after we do that, that's when we're gonna roll out the other part. So we have rollout 1. After we get that in place and set those things in place, then we're gonna monitor that, and then what we're gonna do is we'll roll out the second part of that, and then we're gonna evaluate. And then we will continue to roll out that after we've rolled out the rollout.
You know what that reminds me of? Okay, so I'm going to bring out my roots a little bit. So, you know, I've grown up in church and I'm a church goer and whatever. And all throughout my life, I've always heard God's getting ready to do something. He's getting ready to do this. He's getting ready to do this. Oh, y'all better start praying because God's getting ready to do this. And I always think, God's always getting ready to do something. Is he ever really doing anything? Now, that's from a churchgoer's perspective. Like, I believe God's doing something, you know, but it just makes me laugh. And that's what the rollout kind of makes me feel like. That we're going to do something sooner or later, but we just haven't quite got there yet, you know.
But here's what you need to know. You do need to know it will be rolled out. And then after we set it and after it totally unrolls, We're gonna sit there for a second, and then we will plan for the next rollout and the next piece.
Oh, and there you go. You just said my biggest pet peeve. You said it. I can't stand this one. Look, this one has got to go, right? And it is the use of the word peace, right?
I was gonna say that we're gonna roll out the next piece.
Right. I've never heard that expression until I became an educator. And once I became an educator, I think I heard it at least once a week, if not once a meeting. And it's always like, well, when you start talking about the grammar piece or this piece and that piece, I'm like, I get it. Everything's a piece, but do we have to say that? Like, can we come up with something better? Like, because that is
chunk. How about let's say chunk?
Right. I wonder if I got my administrator thing, like I did the administration thing, and nowhere was that one of my test questions where I had to. But I found myself writing it in a lot of papers.
Can you use the word peace in an appropriate sentence?
Look, I am guilty. I use that word a whole lot in my academic essays, right? But it is what it is, and I mean, it's not a bad word, but it's just funny because
you just hear a lot.
We have used it. We have used that sucker.
And that piece, because there's a lot of pieces that are being rolled out right now. That's what it is.
Yes, exactly.
Well, let's take that like peace. Like, what does that even mean? Like, what does peace mean? Like, if we're gonna take this and we're gonna look at this, like, let's really let's dive in. Let's really kind of figure out like what does it mean? Mm-hmm. AKA. I have no idea. You don't know what it is. I don't like it, and we're getting rid of it.
Right. So next on the list is the phrase, what does that even mean?
What does that even mean? Now, it's not like this. What does it even mean? It's not that, right?
Right.
See, when I first saw that, I'm like, is that what he's saying? But no, when you said it now, it's totally right.
No, it's contemplative. It's like, let's all stop and ponder. Like,
let's think about it.
What does this mean, right? Yeah, no, that's funny.
The meaning of life.
Well, and so then, Tyler, I wasn't even going to bring this one up because I'm so guilty of this one that it's kind of embarrassing. And
I know, that's why I brought it up.
I know.
No, not that one. I'm guilty of this because you just said it. You said, let's just dive in. And let me tell you something. I am so guilty of the phrase diving in. I find myself saying it in the classroom all the time. I'm like, hey, you just got to dive into this. And I said it on the podcast a million times. I say it on the YouTube channel. And I'm like trying my best to cut that out of my vocabulary.
So you're cliche.
I am a cliche.
You are, and you like them too. You like it.
I know. But
you like
cliches are cliche for a reason.
The teachery things.
It's got to look. We've got to put our foot down as a Teach Bigger community. Some of these things have got to go.
I'm just going to tell everyone now, for all you listening, he loves all the acronyms and all those things.
Stop.
He loves the list. He loves the buzzwords. So I know we're talking about cliches.
No, I have nothing wrong with acronyms or lists. Those are important. We need top 10 lists. We need everything organized.
He loves that. Oh my God.
And I like to organize things by letters. So if you can come up with an acronym for everything we do, it makes me really happy.
Yeah. He does. Yeah, he loves that.
He likes titles too.
Loves the titles.
Everything has to have a title. And I don't mean like, ooh, I'm the big chief title. No, like, hey, like, what are we gonna call this insignificant thing?
Right. You gotta really think about it, and it has to roll off the tongue and be palatable for you to say it.
That's right. Everything needs an identity.
And I get sucked into it because I like coming up with names, and I'm like, ooh, we could name it this, or something like that. And I'm just like, well, this doesn't really matter. We're never gonna use this. I just put a lot of thought and energy into this. So, like, really, we could think about it. Like, what does it really mean to have a title? To really to label things.
I'm glad you said that. So, we're talking about Brad. Let's unpack that. Let's unpack the fact that he loves titles. He loves that. Right. I think we should dive deeper and unpack that. What do you think?
So
that's another one.
Unpack, right? Don't you hear that a lot? Well, let's take a minute and unpack that. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just funny. We're making light of it today because of how often we say it, and it becomes just like ingrained in our brains. And we have to stop and say, like, why do we say this so much?
Why do we say that?
It's just a funny thing. Yeah, I do too.
Now let's unpack what he's doing.
Now, look, I'm sure there's probably some teachers or administrators listening right now that are becoming offended because we're calling out everything they do. It's not. We're just laughing with you because we have to laugh at ourselves and say, and here's what I appreciate. My former superintendent, who I love to death, he responded to my Twitter post when I was asking people to submit ideas. And he said the word pivot has got to go. And the first thing that he said, I know, and that's what he said. He said, and I'm the most guilty of it. He said, I said it nonstop for a month. He's like, but I think we've basically exhausted that term. So definitely we got to add to the list pivot. And
I think that was up at the top for this year.
right.
Okay.
And I appreciate, him being willing to share that and laughing at himself. And I think that's what we have to do sometimes as educators. We just have to laugh at ourselves and say like, oh my gosh, that is what we do,
It's true. If we can't laugh, then we cry. So might as well laugh.
That is the truth. That is the truth. So, okay. So the next one that I want to bring up, I know I say it and I just can't stand it because it's just so overused, is the teacher toolbox, right?
Like that's my number one.
You say it a lot.
I do. I'm like, look, this
so
is just
much.
something, right? This is just something you can add to your toolbox.
Toolbox, yep. Mm-hmm.
You're
definitely guilty.
I get it. It's a great imagery. It really kind of helps us feel like we have what we need. And what better could you say? I don't know. What's the substitute? Give me a substitute.
This is what I think every time somebody says like, you can just add this to your teacher toolbox. I'm thinking, oh yeah, because I wasn't taught anything in college and now I have to get taught how to teach in these 2 weeks before kids actually come. So now you're going to get now you're going to give me a toolbox. Now you're going to give me a hammer. Where before I was just looking at apartments, and now I have a field and I have to build a whole house, and now you give me a toolbox. Like,
right.
PSA: if you're a teacher like Tyler and you think that you know everything, don't know everything.
I don't think I know everything.
You have to be a lifelong learner. And
all I can think of is that I didn't learn. Like they have to say that because I wasn't given any tools when I was in college.
Oh yeah,
I
remember you.
Now I come somewhere else, and now I don't know. It just reminds me of all the things that I don't know and all the things that I wasn't taught when I should have been taught them. And I'm just and then also every teacher who ever says it usually makes some type of like physical motion, like a belt, like they're putting on some type of tool belt. And I'm just like, I don't know.
I love it. I'm just gonna die laughing whenever anyone says any of these anymore because we just like went down the list.
I know.
I love it. You know what I heard also this year a lot? Here it is. We're going to do this in phases. And you can also put this with like rollout. We roll out phases.
Right.
So what we're going to do, our plan is that we're going to roll out phase one. And then in phase one, we have these guidelines and blah, 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 blah. And then we'll stop. Then after phase one, then we'll roll out. We'll pivot to phase two. And we'll and we'll roll out that. Now, what is the phase? Like, what is that? Well, we'll talk about that later. But the phase one is going to roll out before phase two. We'll pivot into phase three, and then we'll back up and we will,
and look,
sit there. We'll sit there with that piece.
Right. Well, exactly. So look, here's the thing. I am a very impatient person a lot of times. Like I'm ready to go straight to the final product. Like I love that. And because I think very big picture. And so when somebody tells me we're in phase whatever, that makes me essentially say, so in other words, I'll never see the end of this project.
Correct.
Right. Yes. Like I will never get to see what this is because you've already broken this down to where we're never going to do this.
But it will be rolled out. Don't worry.
As long as it's rolled out. Now,
well, you know what? I mean, let's table that. Let's table that idea, and we can pivot right back around to it, and because these are the conversations that we're having.
Right.
Oh,
the table.
Table that. Let's table that.
I don't really understand. I mean, I know what it means, but table, like the actual table. I mean, I don't know where we got that from.
I don't know either because put a pin in that sounds so much easier because like you're like pinning something on a wall. Like let's table that. Like what you want me to take this idea and set it on a table and we're just gonna like leave it alone for a while. Like
I normally hear that comment when a teacher has a question for an administrator in like a faculty meeting and the administrator doesn't really know and they don't want to, seem like I'm knowledgeable in front of my staff or other staff. So they're like, well, we're just going to table that for the next meeting or here's this, we'll put that in the parking lot.
Oh, I've never heard that one.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you have sticky notes and then like you put it up on the thing.
Oh yeah.
So tabling, I hear that so much. I mean, well, I don't really know right now, but I don't want to stop to think about it.
That's just like these are the conversations that we're having. I feel like that was said a lot, especially during COVID.
So let's define this though, because y'all asked this question, so I want to make sure that you go because I just looked it up. So we're going to learn something new here today. Okay, so that cliche, let's table that. Its origin goes all the way back to the British parliamentary procedure, right? When a piece of legislation was placed on the speaker's table for discussion, most of the English speaking word to table, something means like to take up an issue. So in other words, it's a way of passing the buck down the road. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, and I thought this was actually really funny. This little definition was offered online that I thought was absolutely hilarious. It says, it means let's deal with this later. And what it really means is let's put this off until everyone forgets about it.
That is exactly right. That is such what it means.
Yeah. So anyway.
So
Perfect.
But I feel like that's exactly the same thing with like these are the conversations we're having. Like because there was all like especially with COVID, there were so many good questions that just didn't have answers to it.
Yeah.
And like anytime those questions would ask, it was multiple times in a meeting, our administrators would just be like, well, you know, these are the type of conversations that we're having. We're having these discussions. AKA, we have no idea what we're doing. I'm trying to avoid it because we had to have a meeting and we don't have everything flushed out yet.
Right. So, and you know, I mean, it's organic. It's us. It's teachers. This is the way we are. And we're trying our best to figure things out, you know, and sometimes this stuff just happens. But yeah, so these are just like terms that I laugh because I know we all say them. We're all guilty of them. And so, you know, it's funny to come together and say like, yep, guilty. Cause I'm guilty of most of these.
I've never used any of these.
Well, that's just cause you're not a very good teacher. So.
Well, I feel like we've left the best for last.
Oh gosh!
And I know said that
this is gonna hurt some feelings. This is gonna hurt some feelings.
And I know I said that Toolbox was my number one, but this is actually my number one because of the way it's said. Okay. And it's you're a superstar, you're a rock star, Chris Pratt. You are like such a superstar. You are a rock star. Like you really are. Like you're so good with your kids. You're really, really good. All my teachers are rock stars. They can do anything. I'm like, okay, well, let's bring it back down to earth. Can we have? I feel like we're having two different types of conversations right now. Your teachers are they rock stars or are they you just feel very I don't know. Like I hate that. That nothing sounds more like. I don't know. It's like the equivalent of artsy fartsy. Like it's like the equivalent of artsy fartsy for education. So education commando, then you're a superstar. Like you're so good. Like for real. Like thanks, Becky.
Well, and you know, let me tell you something though. I mean, like, fair enough. Like, we're guys, so I think that doesn't appeal to us as much. And I mean, maybe
I don't think I've ever. I mean, I'm trying to think back if I've ever heard that or like.
I've been told that. I've been told that I'm a superstar. I've been told that I'm a rock star, right? And it's made me feel uncomfortable.
Yes, it makes me feel uncomfortable. But it's not. Too.
But that's me, and I get it because the people who say it are being genuine and they're being kind.
They're trying,
and I'm not in any way. I'm not discouraged by it or whatever, and it's nice. It is, but it's just funny because it's like. We say that in education. And I think it goes to our kids, like, because if you think about it, like if you teach elementary school kids, right? Like you're a superstar, you're a rock star. That's how elementary school kids. Yeah. I mean, and so then so I think a lot of this lingo sometimes carries from our teaching of little children into our conversation with adults. And we just accept it, but then it sometimes feels awkward. So, I mean, you know, like what is the substitute? What should you say? Like, oh, you know, I really appreciate your, you know, whatever, and you did so great. And I mean, fine, just you're a rock star. I'll take it.
Your work was above par.
Right.
Yeah. I'm very glad that you were able to.
I'm very pleased with your outcome.
Right. So I know what you're saying, Tyler, because sometimes it makes you feel embarrassed a little because you feel like everybody's bragging on you, you know, but at the same time, I think that it's genuine and I can appreciate it. So there's a lot of times when people say that I'm just like, yeah, thanks. You know, I'll take it. So, you know, I guess it's because I am a rock star. So I'm okay with that, you know.
Is there a way we can edit that out?
Yeah. There is a way. Yeah.
Well, he doesn't let me edit the things anymore. So that's all on him now.
Right.
Well, let's go ahead and let's kind of pivot this and let's start to kind of roll out our outro here.
Yeah.
Well, look, I just want to end this by affirming you guys that you have done a fantastic job on the rollout of this episode.
after all that we've been saying, I just want to unpack the fact that you guys have done a great job at each phase and putting each of these pieces together.
Okay, look,
What does that mean though? Like
I'm going
a
to tell you,
piece? Like
it means this. I'm going to piggyback off of Mosley for a second. And what it means is that at the end of the day, you have some tools in your toolbox now that you are absolutely going to be able to use to not have these cliches. So I think for now, we're probably going to just table this. And I just want you to know you're a rock star.
I knew he was gonna make it a good. All right. So if you like this episode, or if you agreed with our cliches, please let us know. Or if you think that we left anything out, or maybe there's some things that you hear that we don't hear on a daily basis, please let us know at info@teachbigger.com. And yeah, subscribe. We're streaming on just about all major platforms now: Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcast. I think we're on Stitcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just about everywhere. And
Worldwide.
Worldwide. Yeah. We even have some YouTube videos that are starting to roll out, some tech tips, and we're going to have a whole lot more content coming out to you there. So subscribe, like, share, tell your friends, and let us know how we're doing or what we should talk about.
And here's what I say. I'm going to present a challenge to our listeners, which we have listeners all over the world right now. And I just want to say, like, thank you so much to people who've invested time listening to this podcast. And if you like the content that you're hearing, if you like this episode, maybe you're listening for the first time and you just enjoyed this episode, I challenge you and we ask you to share it with somebody and tell them about the podcast. We'd love to engage with more people and interact with more people. At the end of the day, we just want to leave our mark on education and help teachers to grow and to learn and be the best they can be. So if you enjoyed it, share it with a friend, and we'll see you here next time.